Janet, can you hear me?
Mr. Chairman, Ms. Beverly Easterwood, second.
Thank you, Commissioner Easterwood. It's been moved by Commissioner Hill that we accept the minutes. It's second by Commissioner Easterwood by voice vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Is there any opposition? Hearing none, those 3 sets of minutes have been approved. Thank you.
Okay,
Madam Secretary,
I will now read
a statement that you need to make this evening.
Yes, I do. We would like to welcome those participating to the meeting of the Kansas City, Kansas Landmarks Commission. Members are participating remotely by Zoom webinar or in person in the commission chamber. Mr. David Meditz is serving as chairman this evening. Please note the following instructions for the meeting. If you are joining by Zoom video, please make sure you have an appropriate background and plan to stay visible during the meeting. Members, use the raise your hand feature to speak. After Chairman Meditz recognizes you, unmute your microphone and please state your name when you begin to speak. For those participating from the public via Zoom, use the raise your hand feature when you want to speak on an issue. Chairman Meditz will recognize you when it is your time to speak. Please unmute your microphone and state your name and address before giving your comments. If you are in the commission chamber, please come to the microphone when the agenda item is called, and Chairman Meditz will recognize you when it is your time to speak. If you have called in by telephone only, or if you're having trouble logging into the Zoom meeting, please email planninginfo@wicokck.org as Secretary Parker is monitoring that email. Proper meeting decorum is expected of all participating in the meeting, and anyone who fails to act properly will be removed from the meeting. The city reserves the right to discontinue a meeting if any improper behavior occurs, which prevents the uninterrupted conduct of business. The format for this evening's meeting is as follows. The applicant will make the opening statement explaining the proposal. Please note that the applicant will be given 15 minutes to present their case. The 15 minutes includes the applicant, consultants, and other members of the applicant's team. Members of the Landmarks Commission will then address any questions they may have to the applicant. Any persons wishing to speak in favor will then be called upon and allowed to do so at that time. Then those persons in opposition will be called upon and allowed to make their statements and ask questions. Please note that each member of the public who wishes to speak will be given 5 minutes to express their opinions. Time may not be shared between speakers. Each speaker will be allowed to speak one time unless a question is directed to them. The Landmarks Commission is required to disclose any contact with regard to any application on the agenda. I will ask if any contact has been made with the public, commissioners, or other Landmarks Commission members, and at that time, members of the commission will disclose any contacts they may have had. Our first application is Certificate of Appropriateness CA 2022-011, Luis Mendez. Certificate of Appropriateness for work on windows, siding, and porch at 2926 North Baltimore Avenue, located in the Parkwood Historic District, listed on the Kansas City, Kansas Register of Historic Places. Does any member of the commission have any contact to disclose?
No.
Thank you.
I hear none or see none, Madam Secretary. Madam Secretary.
Is the applicant in the commission chamber?
Yes. All right. At this point, Madam Secretary, Commissioner Chamberlain has arrived and we do have a quorum.
Okay.
Thank you. Our applicant, Mr. Mendez, would you please step forward to the microphone and state your case for your certificate of appropriateness, CA 2022-11. Would you like to address the commission? Just step forward to the microphone and state your name and address, please, for the record.
Would you like the address of the house we're dealing with, or our personal address?
Both, if you would.
Our personal address is 2640 South 53rd Street, Kansas City, Kansas 66106. And then the address we're dealing with is 2926 North Baltimore Avenue, Kansas City, Kansas 66104.
Thank you. What would you like to say about your application?
No current words.
Mr. Chairman, I don't mean to interrupt. I don't know if the other members are having issues, but I'm having a lot of difficulty hearing the applicant.
All right.
I'm sorry.
Yes, if you would.
Could you hear me now?
Yes, I can.
Okay, great.
All right. At this point, I don't think he has any other comments to make to the commission upon this certificate of appropriateness has been presented. Is there any questions of my fellow commissioners they would like to address to the applicant? Does staff have any comments they wish to direct to the commission?
This is Randy Greaves, historic preservationist. This retroactive certificate of appropriateness is for work done without permits to the windows, siding, and porch. Here is the county-wide context of approximately where the property is, as well as a more local context within the Parkwood Historic District. This is an image of the home provided by the applicant. And here is one taken by staff with a side-by-side of how the building originally looked.
You say when he
Make
No,
a
never mind,
note,
never mind. No,
make a note of those, and we'll address that after the staff.
right. Yeah.
So staff recommends approval with the following conditions. The porch support beams on the corner of the porch will be adapted to appear as those shown in the historic photograph from KHRI. Center support beam will be returned to a wrought iron post as seen in the September 22 picture of the building. Similar wrought iron post can be seen in the historic photograph upon close inspection. Similar features exist on nearby buildings of the same architectural style. The windows in the home should be returned to a 1/1 pane aluminum clad style as would have been installed on the property historically. Just to make it easy to see those. On the edges here are the columns. In the middle is wrought iron, very similar to what is currently, well, what is on the home in this photo, but has been removed. And the windows have been replaced with vinyl.
Does that conclude your remarks? All right. Commissioner Chamberlain has a question.
I've only got 54 years experience in the fenestration industry. Define aluminum clad for me.
This is Randy Grease, historic preservationist. Aluminum clad windows are typically windows in which the mullions and the framing of the window have an aluminum cladding over them or are solid aluminum. They are seen often in buildings between 1960 and 90, especially storefronts. They are considered to be historic building material and are often used in residences as well as commercial buildings.
In other words, if these were solid, were extruded aluminum, they'd be acceptable.
Yes, if they were aluminum windows, they would be acceptable.
Well, I'd like to get a copy of these standards because first of all, to take out, and I'm not a fan of vinyl windows, mind you, but to take out a vinyl window that's somewhat thermally efficient in order to put an aluminum one that's horrible in isn't getting the community ahead any. So I'd like to see what it is we're requiring and we're recommending pretty soon here. I would hope that it was aluminum clad and not all aluminum when they go back. I also have a question for the applicant. Were you gentlemen aware of the requirements for this construction before you started? And do you own this property, or are you? Was the presence of a historic district that where this residence was located, was that disclosed when you acquired the property? Disclosing that is a requirement of state law.
Actually, let me talk to him real quick about that. He says no. And actually, when we went out to get the permit construction, like to the city, we were also never informed of this.
You might look at your acquisition documents because there is a disclosure form required when you purchase the property. There is a checkbox on there indicating whether or not it's in a historic district. If that was not checked, the law was violated. This is another example of why we need better notification of property owners in those areas.
Mr. Chairman, Mrs. Hill and Ms. Easterwood both have their hands raised.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. I will start with Commissioner Hill. Your comment or question?
Yes, sir. This is Commissioner Welcome Hill. I have a question. In going over the COA, it shows in questions to the homeowner or the developer that, or excuse me, the petitioner, that he is not willing to change back the windows and a few other attributes. And I'm wondering why staff is making a recommendation when the petitioner has said they're not willing to make the required changes as per the statutes for a historical home.
This is Randy Grease, historic preservationist. I'm going to answer a few questions at once. Our ordinance has a specific clause about the replacement of windows in which vinyl windows are explicitly prohibited. And so aluminum clad windows are recommended because that was what appears to be on the house, judging from photographs. Staff recommends approval with conditions, as if those conditions are met, approval should be given according to the Secretary of the Interior standards. Without those conditions, approval should not be given from staff recommendation. Does that clarify your question?
Did that clarify your question, Commissioner Hill?
Yes, I understand that the different stipulations have to be met, but I was kind of taken back by the unwillingness of the petitioner as shown in the COA.
I am going to ask the participant or the applicant to address that is the question of Commissioner Hill had is to why the response of no and the unwillingness to correct those items or adjust those items. Could you address that, please?
Yes, sir. So the reason why we changed the windows to begin with was because to our standard, what we see, because we've done remodels before, we got a remodeling company. To our standard, it was better for us to change the windows because the other windows were not in the best conditions. And since we did not know anything about it, the house being on a historic district, we didn't have a clue. We had to keep them at aluminum. So we just go to the store, order windows, what we're used to, vinyl. We had no idea we needed to get aluminum. And the reason why we're not willing to change them is because windows are obviously expensive. We already got the windows in, they're already put in. If we get another set of windows, that'll be a lot more money because it'll be pretty hard to find a manufacturer that will actually make aluminum windows nowadays. Most manufacturers are only gonna make vinyl. So, I mean, if we get aluminum windows, we'll probably have to find them elsewhere. It'll probably have to be like a special order type of deal. We'll get way more expensive than vinyl windows. We'll have to get another set of windows. And what are we gonna do with the windows we already have? Literally brand new. We don't have anywhere. Sorry.
Commissioner Meditz, this is Commissioner Welcome Hill, if I might jump in here.
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. I get the impression that the petitioner is someone who does this for a living, as he does not live at this address. Is that correct, sir?
Yes, the house is set to be remodeled so we can resell it at a.
Okay, as a reseller or a house flipper, if you will, you should know what the standards are in each city that you operate. And the fact that you didn't turn around and investigate that or take heed to that before you started work on this property, and you have an attitude of, well, the windows are already there, it's too expensive to fix the situation, I don't think is appropriate. And as my fellow commissioner, Commissioner Chamberlain, who is an expert in the glass industry, will tell you there are many places that you can get proper windows taken care of in this community. Yes, it's going to be at an extra cost, but I think that's the cost of doing business and not doing your due diligence. And that's just my opinion.
If I may add, how would it be my diligence if I wasn't aware of the whole situation in the first place? First of all, you guys should have came in. Why? The thing that bothers me here is that you guys waited till the last minute. Literally, we're almost done with the whole remodel to send an inspector at the last minute. Literally, we're like 2 weeks before finishing the house, and you wait however long. It took months and that we were working on the house. Nobody said a word. Nobody said anything at the city when we got the permits. So it doesn't seem to me reasonable for me to worry about something that wasn't even my fault in the first place. So yes, I am liable for that because I wasn't aware. I'm sorry, I'm new to the business, but I'm also not liable. It's like a 50-50%. It's not, I'm not solely liable for it because it's not just me.
Thank you for that response. Commissioner Hill, if you don't mind, I'm going to move on to Commissioner Eastwood and get what her question is.
Yes, sir.
Yes, my question was to Commissioner Chamberlain about the requirement for disclosure being a state law. does that come into play regardless of who sells the property? Meaning whether or not a real estate agent is involved or
Commissioner Eastwood, this is Mr. Commissioner Chamberlain. I can't hear you. Can you get a little closer to the mic?
I'm sorry. My question is, can you hear me better now?
Yes, ma'am, that's better.
Okay. My question was about the statement that you made about it being a state law that historic property be disclosed to a purchaser. Is that regardless of whether or not a real estate company or title company is involved in the sale?
No, ma'am, the state law requires a disclosure sheet. Most of it is check boxes, but there's a number of conditions that have to be disclosed on the transfer of property.
And who produces that form, or where would they get that form from? Or is that something that they would get from a title company?
I'm going to defer to counsel on that. I don't want to state.
Okay. I was just curious.
The realtors customarily provide the documentation, but I don't know whose ultimate responsibility it is.
Okay.
Thank you, Commissioner Easterwood. Is there any other comments by my fellow commissioners?
Well,
Commissioner Schrader?
Excuse me. Yeah, this is Commissioner Schrader. One of the things that this commission needs to do as soon as possible is try to understand why we repeatedly have applicants who state that they were not told that when they received their permit that there were any requirements for historic district. I know that many years ago that was an issue. Then as recently as 2 or 3 years ago, that got corrected and permits were not issued in historic districts or with historic properties unless there was a caveat on the permit. This applicant is, it seems like a broken record now. We keep hearing the same thing, that the people at 47th and State or 49th and State continue to not respect the historic ordinances. And it has, I don't know that we have any recourse other than the staff recommendation for this particular application, but I tend to agree it's not fair. The unified government is not doing its job. And I see a representative from the mayor's office. I will be speaking with him about that.
Thank you, Commissioner Schrader. At this point in time, I would ask, is there anyone else in attendance tonight in favor of this certificate of appropriateness? Seeing none or hearing none, I will ask, is there anyone here in opposition to this certificate of appropriateness? Seeing none or hearing none, I will ask final time, is there any further questions from my fellow commissioners? I see none, I hear none. I would like to make this statement.
Commissioner Meditz?
Yes.
Commissioner Easterwood has her hand up, sir.
Oh, I am sorry, Commissioner Easterwood. I apologize. I missed that.
Oh, no problem. I did it at the last minute. But I would like to ask the applicant if he bought the property, was a real estate agent involved in his purchase of the property, or did he buy directly from the seller?
You said from a real estate agent or from owner to owner?
Was a real estate agent involved in the transaction where you purchased the property?
No, it was owner to owner.
Okay.
owner to owner.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. One of the things that concerns me with the certificate of appropriateness, as reiterated by Commissioner Schrader and questions from my other commissioners, is the fact that you have purchased this, renovating it for resale.
Correct.
My
Yes.
question at this point to you, is this your first?
Second.
It is your second. Third time's the charm. You shouldn't have any mistakes if you go this way. In my belief, there has been mistakes made on all parties involved through this process, but it also falls upon you to know the law, to know what you're doing, and to be advised of that, and to ask the questions when you apply for permits. Don't walk in, go, I want a permit, get it, and walk out the door. That's not the way this should operate. That's not what we want. And if you want this commission's approval in the future, I would suggest you follow that, learn, and also be kind of an agent for us. Put the word out. You aren't alone in this world, and I know you communicate with others. Okay? That is just my statement on that, is please learn from this, and learning can cost you money. And there are stipulations that the unified government has agreed to, that as we do our job here, that we have to take into consideration. That's the end of my statement. Any other comments? If not, I will call for a vote on this subject here. Do I have a motion for approval or denial?
Mr. Chair, this is Commissioner Schrader. I move we approve this certificate of occupancy subject to staff comments.
Mr. Chairman, I reluctantly second that motion.
It was moved that we approve the certificate CA 2022-001, subject to all comments and suggestions outlined in the staff report, with the following 3 conditions presented by staff. That motion was seconded by Commissioner Chamberlain. At this point, I ask Madam Secretary, I call for the vote.
Bland,
Commissioner Bland, your vote is needed.
Mr. Chairman, I don't see him on here anymore. Oh, there he is.
He just flipped his mic on and off.
Commissioner Bland, your vote, please.
Merle, your mic is off. Try turning it on again. You're on now.
Commissioner Bland, we have a motion on the floor for approval of certificate of appropriateness CA 2022-011. Your vote, sir. Madam Secretary, at this point, I believe that is an abstention. Moving on.
Chamberlain,
Aye.
Easterwood,
Aye.
Welcome Hill,
Nay.
Schrader,
Aye.
Taylor, Commissioner Taylor,
He appears to be muted. Madam Secretary, I believe that's an abstention
well, it's actually a no vote. I can't
or
do
no vote.
an extension or an abstention. Van Middlesworth,
Commissioner Van Middlesworth, can you hear us? Your vote is needed.
Mr. Chairman, I believe we need a quorum call.
well, we've got everybody on here. It's just that they're muted and I do not have enough votes to pass this motion because I've got 3 people who have not voted yet.
If my fellow commissioners can hear me, Taylor, Van Middlesworth, Bland, we need your votes presently on this motion. You are muted in response to us. If you're on video, please signify with a thumbs up. If not, we cannot pass this certificate of appropriateness. Madam Secretary.
Mr. Van Middlesworth, you are unmuted. Did you vote?
I voted aye.
Okay.
Commissioner Taylor, you are unmuted. Do you vote yay or nay on this?
Yay. Yay.
Yay.
Okay.
Commissioner Bland, your vote, please.
Burl, you're unmuted. Can you hear us?
I'm hearing no response.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, that motion to approve this application subject to the conditions and the staff report passes. 5 in favor and 1 opposed.
Thank you, Madam Secretary.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, we're going to move on to the next application, which is
One
certificate.
moment, please. Thank you, applicants. Your certificate has been approved with the conditions as stipulated. So please get with our unified government staff and work out those. Thank you.
Our next application is Certificate of Appropriateness CA 2023-002. Paul Stark with Stark Wilson Duncan Architects. Certificate of Appropriateness for work to the roof, gutters, scuppers, downspouts, and garage doors at 805 North 6th Street in Kansas City, Kansas City Hall lofts, listed on the National Register of Historic Places and Register of Kansas Historic Places. Does any member of the commission have any contact to disclose with regard to this case? Okay, Mr. Chairman, I have Neil Martell with his hand raised. I believe he's going to represent the applicant.
Hi, good evening. This is Neil Martell, Eagle Point Development, address 125 John Roberts Road, South Portland, Maine. I'm stepping in this evening for our architect, Paul Stark, who is unfortunately out of the country this evening. We were hoping to have this meeting last month, but I think we ran short of a quorum. So I'll do my best to pinch hit for him here. I by no means am the architect, but I will do my best to cover. So as I mentioned, we have hired Stark Wilson Duncan Architects. They're located at 315 Nichols Road. That's in Kansas City, Missouri. Their architectural team is part of our project team on the renovation of the existing City Hall Lofts building, which is located at 805 North 6th, as well as the adjacent parking garage located to the east at 538 Ann Avenue. Both buildings are listed on the National Historic Register and were last renovated in 2002. At that time, the existing City Hall building was converted to multifamily apartments, and the parking garage remained as a parking garage use. Over the last 20 years, there have been no substantial major renovations of the project, but we are preparing to do a substantial renovation to the interiors of the apartments to replace sort of, elements that are beyond their useful life. In addition to that, we're going to be doing a little bit of exterior work to address some of those elements that too have been beyond their useful expected life. The work that we're seeking a certificate of appropriateness for these two buildings includes a replacement of the flat roof membranes, which are not visible to the public, the scuppers, gutters, and downspouts, which are being replaced with matching materials, shapes, and locations. Also, 3 overhead garage doors in the parking garage are planned on being replaced with new doors that will match the existing appearance. All of this proposed work has been previously approved by the State Historic Preservation Office and the National Park Service. As I said, I will do my best to answer as many non-architectural questions that I can about the project. Again, realizing that our architect is unfortunately out of the country.
Thank you, sir.
You're very welcome.
Do any of my fellow commissioners have any comments or questions for the applicant? Hearing none, or seeing none, does staff have any comments?
This is Randy Greaves, Historic Preservationist. As was said, this is a request for a certificate of appropriateness for work on the roof, gutter, scuppers, downspouts, and the garage doors. All work has previously been approved by the State Historic Preservation Office of Kansas. I seem to have drawn on the picture and I don't know how. Staff recommends approval with the following conditions. Street trees will be planted and maintained in accordance with Ordinance Section 27-696 through Section 27-704. All conditions for approval submitted by the State Historic Preservation Office must be followed as listed in the SHPO report as well as the staff report, and all future work must obtain a certificate of appropriateness prior to seeking building permits.
Do any of my fellow commissioners have any questions for staff?
Mr. Chairman, this is Commissioner Schrader. I just have a question for Mr. Greaves. Could you talk a little bit more about the street trees requirement? I'm imagining that this has something to do with the original approval of the project back in 2002.
This is Randy Greaves, Historic Preservationist. Our ordinance requires for businesses to maintain specific landscape standards. Currently, the tree wells surrounding the property are either empty or have dying trees. So those should be replaced in order to remain within those ordinances.
Thank you.
Mr. Reeves, this is Chairman Meditz. I have a question. Is the applicant aware at this point of the 2 staff recommendations? Have you made the applicant aware And have they agreed to these two staff recommendations?
This is Randy Greaves, historic preservationist. Prior to these meetings, I send all staff reports to the applicants to gather any comments they may have, to answer any questions they may have, and to make them aware of what is coming, what will be discussed, and what the expectations may be. The only thing we leave off of those draft reports is whether or not staff recommends approval or denial. They have seen the same report that you have in front of you today.
Thank you for that clarification. Is there anyone here in attendance tonight to speak in favor of this certificate of appropriateness 2023-002? Seeing none, hearing none. Is there anyone here in opposition to certificate of appropriateness CA 2023-002? Hearing none, seeing none. I would call for a motion for approval or denial of CA 2023-002.
Mrs. Hill has her hand raised.
Again, I apologize for missing that. Commissioner
I
Hill,
think she's making a motion.
you're just making the motion.
That would be correct, sir.
Thank
This-
you. Commissioner Hill is making the motion to approve CA 2023-002, subject to all comments, suggestions outlined in the staff report, subject to the following conditions as stated. Street trees will be planted, maintained in accordance with the ordinance section 27-696 through section 27-704. And all work must obtain a certificate of appropriateness prior to seeking building permits.
Mrs. Easterwood has her hand raised.
Yes, Commissioner Easterwood.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I second.
Commissioner Easterwood seconds that motion. Madam Secretary, I call for the vote.
The vote is for approval, subject to the conditions in the staff report. Bland? Commissioner Bland, you're unmuted.
Commissioner Bland, I need your vote, please.
All right, Mr. Chairman, I'll come back to him. Chamberlain?
Aye.
Easterwood?
Aye.
Welcome Hill?
Aye.
Schrader?
Aye.
Taylor?
Commissioner Taylor, can you hear us? Do you have a yay or a nay vote?
He's muted. So is Mr. Van Middlesworth.
Am I?
Okay, Mr. Van Middlesworth, your vote?
Aye.
Okay. Mr. Taylor or Mr. Bland?
Aye.
Van Middlesworth votes aye.
Aye.
Okay. So is
Commissioner
Mr.
Taylor, can you hear us? Do you have a vote, sir?
Aye.
Yeah, he's the
Aye.
one
Thank you.
that voted aye. I don't think we got Mr. Bland.
Commissioner Bland, do you have a vote, sir?
Mr. Chairman, we do have a quorum. That motion to approve, subject to the conditions in the staff report, passes 6 in favor and none opposed.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. That concludes our applications for this evening, and we will move on to reports. At this point in time, I am going to hold the update. Oh, pardon me. It's my eyesight. We'll move on to number 4 is the update from Mr. Mosier, President of the Kansas City, Kansas Community College. Sir, if you would step forward to the mic, and I apologize for skipping over for you for a moment.
No problem. Thank you, sir. Well, good evening, everyone. It's good to see everyone. It's been quite a while. The last time I was in front of the Landmarks Commission was fall in 2021. So it's good to be back and have a lot of information to share and updates on the project, which I think you'll be very pleased. So we've been working very hard since the time that we launched this project several years ago. The partners have changed a little bit. The size has changed a little bit because of the pandemic and price escalation. The original proposal was 130,000 square feet at $70 million, which immediately went to $87 million. So we pulled back and we have our 3 partners that are with us now. The project is at 100,000 square feet and a budget of $62 million. So I'd like to provide an update on it. It was worth a second. Hold on. I apologize. Yeah. So again, we're really focused at doing a very quality job on taking and integrating and preserving the history of the 7th Street Church in the new downtown community education, health, and wellness center. Next. These 2 slides or these 2 images show how we really want to do it with respect and dignity to the church and reflect as much of the personality and style and design of the church in the design process as well. And we'll go over these images in greater detail in a few slides. Next. So in November 2021, the certificate 2021-019 was approved. There were 7 conditions with that. Condition 1 had 5 ABCDEs underneath it, and they each related to elements of the material to be used. So we have some examples of that. Next. So the trusses in the sanctuary area, we really want to pull those out. In the early 70s, they were painted white, and take them out, strip the paint, restore them to their natural wood beauty. In order to do this is going to require a lot of work. We actually have to take the roof off so that we can get to those trusses and take them out without damage, if at all possible. Next. So this is a little closer view, and it identifies some of the other elements of the church. We have the sanctuary trusses. You can see approximately 7 stained glass windows hanging inside the building that all need to get carefully removed, restored, preserved, so that they're ready to go back in. And then the church pews will be reutilized as benches, banquettes in this area as well. The conference room is behind that gray wall, and we'll show the entrance here in a little bit. Next. So this is the conference room that really has the history of the church. We're telling its story. We're showing the elements that came directly from the church in the C of A, the naming of this room will be done in combination and partnership with the Historic Preservation Design Board. So the exterior red brick, the stanchion toppers on the side add some more depth, the stained glass windows, and even not marked on here, but you can see the foundation stones underneath the concrete bench seats. Next. Inside, we really want to tell the story of the church, the history of the church. So this is just an example of our historic wall that we put in at the college that tells the story and the history of Wyandotte County and then the integration of the college. Also look at possibly built-in artifacts on the corner of the room. You can see the deep door and trim and an adjacent cabinet. That's a door and a cabinet that's in the basement of the church. It's about 18 inches deep, very unique in nature. So we want to take that out. It'll be a false door, but it will still be there to show that deep inset of the trim. Next. This is on the other side. It's hard to tell maybe on the slide, but you can see the history underneath the name of the church. The wall comes out a bit where the stained glass windows are, and those are two key stained glass window elements in the church so that we can backlight them to show the beauty. And on the front is a frosted built-in cabinet. So we're looking for those types of items that we can really build into the building. And then if the floor is able to be saved, we want to refinish and use the original floor as well. Next. So this just shows the pews that we are looking at. There's this room and there's some others scattered. So we'll see how many that we can put together, but we'll use as many as we can. On the end of the pews in the current photo, you'll see the top right-hand corner has design elements on the end of the pew. The other benches have a piece of wood where they're joined together in a semi-octagonal shape that went into the sanctuary. So the thought is to take the ends off of another one and put that together so they're ornamental on both sides of the pews to become benches. Next. The second condition was to do the historical survey of the church. And you can see there it's done, and underneath the window of our commissioners is the date that it was submitted. Thank you. Next. Yeah, you're okay. The third condition, there are several elements in here, but one of the main ones was surpassing the 70% milestone of the total construction project. So in December, we were actually at above $46 million now, so it's 74%. There's some more detail later on. There's some other elements in there as well relating to the permits and such, I'll address later. Next. Condition 4 was the historic preservation efforts that we are going to take, similar to number 2, engaging the Historic Preservation Design Board. And as we go, even though the design board approved what we had submitted, we'll continue to work with the board. One of the things that lately we're having conversations on is the taking 3D scans of the building from the interior. And I'm actually saddened to say that, I meant to say it earlier where they showed the interior, more damage has been done. There's a lot of people living inside. There's mattresses, there's desks, there's dressers, there's drug paraphernalia everywhere. Unfortunately, the first time I went in the church, none of the stained glass was broken, which was amazing. And now some of the stained glass is broken. But we can get all of those items out. The college will do that when we take possession, so we can clear those rooms, pull the tarps down, take the plywood off the windows, and then 3D scan the interior of the building as we progress. And we may find other historical elements that we want to integrate as well. So we'll continue to work together on that. Next. Condition 5 is the establishment of the Historic Preservation Design Board. Next. And the elements underneath there that we hire a historic preservationalist, that the board is involved to select design elements chosen to be preserved and incorporated and displayed in the new facility. Next. The board may also identify historic preservation deliverables for a class in historic preservation. So we're looking at how we do that. The faculty control the curriculum at colleges, but it doesn't mean it has to be a 4-credit class, right? We can still offer classes to the community on historic preservation. And then the board will be dissolved after all the elements are incorporated and are satisfactorily been incorporated into the building, and we have a certificate of occupancy. So we'll continue those efforts. Next. This was just the date that the report was approved by the design board. The 6th condition was the proposed destiny. So on the bottom left-hand corner, that's the original destiny created by Rita Blitt in 1972. And we took that and made, this is a stainless steel destiny now that is 8 foot tall, about 6 feet wide, 14 inches across, and it will sit on a pedestal of the foundation stones. There are some concerns with the foundation stones because they're not foundation stones, they're fascia on top of stacked rock. So a lot of them are broken, but we're going to use just as much as we can. Next. And then condition 7 was the historic structural report. So we had that done and submitted, and that was in April of 2021. So actually before the final approval of the C of A. Next. So on our milestones that we've done since it was approved, we mentioned surpassing the 70% mark. On the right-hand side shows some of our major funders. Again, we've surpassed $46 million now. And we actually have about $15 million in pending request, or that will be submitted in the next 90 days. The other important factor is that we have all the legal agreements with the partners. So it is an association legally bound that any money that is not raised is paid by the partner. So in essence, the project is 100% funded. We'll just continue to fundraise. Next. So we're very excited about it. It's been about 4 years in the making. This just shows a timeline of where we have been and where we are. The demolition timeframe, it's June, July. We've got another slide showing coming up, but it would start around August. But we wanted to be able to do some selective deconstruction of the church in order to get all the elements saved. Next, I'll explain that better in the next one, I'm sorry. Other major milestones. So we do have a legal ownership agreement that KCC will own the ground, and as a commercial condominium association, the partners will have legal ownership of their space. So they're not tenants, they're actually owners and investors in our downtown community. We have the bylaws, articles of incorporation, and owner agreements. Again, so the project is 100% funded. Next. The college has purchased all of the privately owned property on the bank, which is the old computer store and the blue building on the southeast corner. There has been a couple different denomination of churches and now a Hispanic or Hispanic kind of a small goods store. We're currently working with the unified government to acquire we have the options for the land bank properties and the UG owned properties, which is 600 State Avenue, the bottom right-hand corner parking lot, and the northern half of the property east of Willigill. Next. We have gone through the RFP process and selected our owner's representative, Kopek and Brooks. We went through the RFP process and selected PGAV as our architect, and they have been the ones that have been working with us on illustrations the last 3 years. Next. Environmental phase 1 and phase 2 studies are complete, so we can proceed to abatement at anytime the options are approved, if land is transferred to the college. And we will release the request for proposals for construction manager at risk tomorrow. It will it will be out for about 30 days, and then we'll evaluate those contractors. Next. So our timeline, the goal is to occupy and be open for the community in fall 2025. So these are some of the main elements in our timeline. Let's go ahead and go to the next slide, please. And I highlighted some ones that I thought that the commission would have special interest in. Now we're ready to move forward to apply for selective demolition or deconstruction, which is directly related to the church. We can put in that application in the very near future. The time frame for that, because again, we want to do this extremely careful. We want to remove all the stained glass windows without damage. If we don't use them all, right, we wanted them to be used other places so that they are saved. We have to strip all the wood. We have to refurbish and restain all of that. That won't start until probably August, but we've got to get to those points first, and remediation, et cetera. And then the demolitions of all the buildings would take place after that selective deconstruction of the church to save the historical elements, doorways, and everything. But the bid package won't go out until November. And that, if we waited to that time frame, as was in the original C of A, to have the building permits done, then we won't have time to restore all the historical elements that come out in time to go back into the church. And then we have our substantial completion date of 6/24/25. So we've been doing a lot of work with the city planning department and the timelines and everything that we've done and accomplished since the last time that we have been together. If you go to the next slide, please. So you can see where we are today. And what we would like to do is just request that we be able to move forward with the updated timeline that was presented on the previous slide. The project is 100% go, it's 100% funded, everyone's fully invested in the project, and we just want to make sure that we have the time to carefully take out the historical elements. So, so we're going to store them in the blue building on the corner. It's very solid, so they'll be secure, and then we can start on stripping, refurbishing, and restoring those elements so that they can be measured and everything and go back into the design process to go into the new facility. So with that, that is my update and presentation and request.
Thank you, Dr. Mosier. Very interesting, very, very informative. Does any of my fellow commissioners have any questions for Dr. Mosier at this point? Commissioner Schrader.
I just want to ask our staff. Yeah, this is Commissioner Schrader. Randy, we don't need to make any formal approval of this. Isn't that just a procedural thing to make application at this point? it's not really a landmarks approval needed, is it? Because I want to do that, but I don't know if we've got all the proper applications.
This is Randy Greaves, historic preservationist. It's kind of up to you guys on this one, so far as we can figure out. Dr. Mosier has submitted everything for a landmarks application. If that is the route you decide needs to be taken, and we will go through with that process. This does not trigger any of the normal reasons to have a landmarks application. The only way it relates is as an amendment. So I think you can accept an amendment, and I can make a note of it in the file for this case.
So it'd just be amendment to the timeline, pretty much. Is that basically all it is? Okay, that answers that question. Mr. Chairman, I'd just like to make a statement. First of all, I don't know that everybody knows, I was the representative from the Landmarks Commission on the Historic Preservation Design Board, and it was a really great process. We pretty much finished our work, as was noted last July. And one thing that I would ask of you, Dr. Mosier, I don't think there's any reason why we shouldn't distribute a copy of that final report to the Landmarks Commission. Sure. It's got some interesting information in it. And I know we have copies of it, but we just want your permission, because I think it actually is your document. though that would then give documentation that work is done, or that report at least has been finished. I will also just like to say that we've unfortunately lost a few members of our Historic Preservation Design Board. They've moved out of town and some things. So as we move forward, I think those of us who are left would be happy to work with you to get some replacements identified for some of those folks who were no longer around, including probably Mr. Greaves, and as the representative from the planning department. So we'll reach out to you to do that. And then, so that was a statement. I do have one other question, just as a clarification. I seem to recall at one time that Community America had been interested in being a part of the project, but maybe as a standalone. Has that been changed or decided, or, I'm just curious. It's nothing, it has to do with anything official. I'm just curious.
Sure, no, that's a great question. With the escalations and everything, as we consolidated the project, they were originally at the end of the large technical labs in a standalone building. So we have integrated them into the first floor of the educational stack on the northwest corner. So they'll be facing 7th Avenue on the north half of the building, and then running along there. Because we needed to scale back all the footings, foundations, everything.
Understand.
So we went from 4 buildings to 2, and what was the Community Health and Wellness Center, now the remaining partner is SWOPE, and they are the 4th floor on the educational stack. So all 3 partners are in that one building, which will work out great for the community, because then they can go from one source to another.
That's kind of what I assumed, but I just wanted to double check, because I knew originally they were going to be like that. So thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. And if I may add one with it, the original C of A said the appropriate permit, so it didn't specify which ones. And
that's what I thought.
Yeah.
Dr. Moser, this is Commissioner Chamberlain, and thank you for the report. I assume that the architects have some design ideas for future expansion that this thing is amenable to. It's easily expandable if the need arises.
Yes. So now that we don't need the second building, which is the current parking lot for Gill, the unified government is looking at a place that they can house all of those services together for those who are hungry and in need of housing and showering and different services. Then the northwest part of that block is still available from Willigill to 7th Street. For future. For future, yes.
Well, we, as has been pointed out, have no business with new construction, but I think what you're building will be considered a landmark pretty quickly.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
I think Commissioner Chamberlain is looking to the future generations and leaving them a. I do have a couple of questions just for clarification. And this may be to staff or even legal. The certificate of appropriateness initially was 5 partners. For staff, legal, or Dr. Mosier, do we need a new CA because of the, we're now down to 3 partners instead of 5?
This is Randy Grease, historic preservationist. The petitioner is still the same person, and that is what we usually pay attention to in these cases when hands are changing. So as Dr. Mosier is still here in front of us petitioning for this change, as he was petitioning for the original C of A, that does not require a new application.
Thank you. My other one would be deals with the historical aspect. And I realize that all agreements, et cetera, can be broken in court, et cetera. The architectural features that we are trying to save from the church, that ownership of those features will be with what entity? All or one?
They are all within KCKCC's footprint of the building. First, we purposely put it, it's in the first floor of that main building. So it actually it will sit where the church currently sits.
Okay. And my third and final question is the history of that church, knowing that all things have a lifespan. The mural on the wall, what is your anticipated lifespan of that mural, which would be the kind of the signature history of that church?
The materials that are used nowadays last a long time. I don't have a technical answer for you, but because it's inside a conference room, there's no sunlight, there are no UV rays destroying the surface of that material. It would be a very long time.
Thank you, sir. At this point, if there's no further questions, and Commissioner Hill, I believe your hand is raised.
Yes, sir. This is Commissioner Welcome Hill. First of all, thank you for the update, Dr. Mosier. I love seeing the implementation of the historic elements. And I think you have really, with your team, gone above and beyond what we've asked as the Landmarks Commission to protect the sanctity of this church and its beautiful history in our community. That being said, I would just ask you on a personal note to keep the Landmarks Commission apprised of the groundbreaking ceremony that will be happening the week of September 11th, so that those of us who would like to attend may do so. And thank you very much.
Thank you. And I will absolutely send everyone an invite. It's September 8th at 2 p.m. But I will get an invite to everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Are there any other questions for, I believe, Commissioner Easterwood? Is your hand up?
Commissioner, you are muted.
You are muted.
Oh, sorry about that. Okay. All right. I just wanted to add my congratulations to your updated plan. And I really appreciate all the updates that you've made to include the historical features of the church.
Thank you, ma'am. I appreciate that.
All right. I don't see any other hands raised at this point. So I will ask, is there anyone else in attendance this evening that would like to speak in favor of this certificate of appropriateness? Please step forward, state your name and address, and you have up to 5 minutes.
Chairman Meditz, members of the commission, both here personally and virtually. Lavert Murray, I'm the Economic Development Advisor for Mayor Tyrone Garner. I want to indicate that there is complete support for this project, but I did have a question seeking clarification of the action tonight. And of course, this is something Dr. Mosier and I have discussed with Mr. Hand, but your actions tonight will address the project moving forward. And of course, the timetable that was submitted related to the construction and demolition. That was a concern early on to protect the artifacts of this historic building. The demolition will have to occur obviously before construction begins. And so I'm wanting to make sure that your actions tonight will allow demolition to take place so that those items to be saved can be saved. And so want to make sure that that demolition schedule can be approved and achieved so that the project's not jeopardized and that the artifacts there's no further damage occurring. So that may suggest that demolition work should start fairly quickly.
Thank you, sir, for your comments. Commissioner Schrader, you have
I have a question for Mr. Murray, and it's actually also for legal. I don't want to do too much, but I don't want to do too little, or I don't want the commission to do either of those. I was wondering if one of the slides that Dr. Mosier presented, I think it's slide number 19, which gives the critical timeline elements. I was wondering if it might be appropriate for us to move to amend the certificate of occupancy. I don't want to change it. I don't want to do whatever. That just adds this revised timeline to that. My non-legal mind is thinking that that would allow some safety on both sides, that we're not really changing what we told you last November, but we're allowing the fact that time schedules do change. And as I recall, the original certificate of occupancy didn't get into this kind of detail. But as you've explained it, this does what we've been asking you to do. So I don't know if Mr. Kuhn could comment on that at all. I don't know if that, I'm just looking for some clarification.
Mr. Kuhn, do you have a response to Commissioner Schrader's question?
Daniel Kuhn, legal department. I do not have the application or the actual certificate in front of me, so I'm afraid I do not have a good answer to that. I don't know if Randy might have some recollection. That being said, I don't believe there's an action item before the commission tonight. And I don't believe that an amendment is necessary. But I will look at the certificate as it was approved to see if maybe I'm mistaken.
Mr. Kuhn, this is Chairman Meditz. I have a question. We may be, again, as Commissioner Schrader saying, going too far, too deep or so, but you don't think an amendment is necessary, but to move this project along, would a amendment be of any advantage if we discovered later on we needed it? If you understand kind of what I'm saying, is it immaterial, or does this provide us with a bit of a safeguard if we look in the future and went, oh, we should have done this?
Right, I understand. Thank you, Chairman Matt. It's Daniel Kuhn, Legal Department. That might be something the commission will consider, as I understand it. Again, as Commissioner Schrader discussed, there was a subcommittee, and I think an amendment maybe coming out of the subcommittee might make sense to sort of formalize the aspects that would be incorporated into the build.
Thank you, sir.
But I guess to clarify, Commissioner, that it's I don't think that amendment is necessary for the COA per se. That would just be, again, be an amendment to formalize the historical aspects that would be preserved.
Thank you. Commissioner Schrader.
Mr. Kuhn, is it possible maybe that we just have a motion to recommend approval of this revised timeline? We could actually be silent in reference to the actual C of A. In other words, it would show that this body is in support, but it's probably not legally binding.
Well, in a sense, I think that Daniel Kuhn, Legal Department, in a sense, Commissioner Schrader, that I think that would be somewhat like a resolution to show support. But again, like you said, it would not be legally binding.
I guess my question to Dr. Mosier and Mr. Murray, do you think a recommendation of approval would suffice in this case so that you could keep moving?
Yes, sir. Thank you. So in our conversations with Director Han and city planning, it was just a recognition of this timeline.
Okay.
Meets the desires of the commission.
Well then, Mr. Chairman, I move that
Commissioner Schrader, I do have to have a procedural move before that. Thank you, gentlemen, for your comments and your input at this point. But I do need to ask, is there anyone in attendance this evening that is in opposition to this or against this proposal? Even though we're not voting on a CA tonight, I just wanted to see if there was any in the community that was in opposition. I do agree that this, through all the trials and tribulations that we have put our applicant through in the past almost 3 years, they have done a very, very good job in trying to save our history, acknowledge our history, and provide a future for our community. I am in agreement with Commissioner Schrader. I would like to see this commission just pass a resolution in favor of this updated timeline. Commissioner Easterwood, you have a comment also?
Yes, sir. I just wanted to make the motion for your suggestion that you just made.
Go right ahead.
So this Beverly Easterwood, Commissioner, and I move that we pass the resolution in favor of the revised timeline.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
I'll leave it to legal, but I don't think we need to pass a resolution. All we need to do is to make a motion showing support of this timeline.
Okay. I retract my previous motion and revise it to say that I make a motion that we provide support of the revised timeline. Or
Vice-
whatever Ms. Parker just said.
Madam Secretary, will that work?
That works for me.
It works for you.
Commissioner Welcome Hill, I second that motion.
Commissioner Hill, thank you. And I think it's just a voice vote, do we not, Madam Secretary?
Yeah, that's fine. If you want to just do a voice vote, that's fine.
I would like all of my fellow commissioners who are in favor of this motion as presented by Commissioner Easterwood signify by saying yes.
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 Is there
Yes.
any opposition? I'm hearing none. I believe that motion carries, Madam Secretary. Thank you, Dr. Mosier. Thank you for your, extend this to your partners, please.
Yes, sir.
To your new group and to your committee members who worked so hard to do this. We're looking towards the future.
Thank you very much, sir. And thank you to the full commission for your support and guidance along this entire journey. And we continue to look forward to work with you as the project evolves. So thank you very much.
I know we put you through the ringer a little bit, but
it's okay.
That's
It's your job.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, just also a point, the PowerPoint that Dr. Mosier presented will also be attached to the minutes of this meeting.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. At this point now, we will move on again. And I am going to drop down to item number 2 under reports and hold Commissioner Schrader's subcommittee report till the end.
Commissioner Medics. I'm sorry, this is Commissioner Welcome Hill. If I may interrupt for just one moment. On the previous item, Secretary Parker did not make a request, but just for clarity, I did have some knowledge of this and the update because I am at the college and I had briefly spoken about these issues with Dr. Mosier, and because I work in the foundation office, I overhear the weekly shareholders meeting on Monday. So just for transparency, I was aware of some of these issues.
Thank you. I do appreciate that. All right. Mr. Greaves, planning and urban design reports, please.
This is Randy Greaves, historic preservationist. The first section is the CLG SHPO agreement. We had a meeting with the State Historic Preservation Office of Kansas on Wednesday, in which we discussed the programmatic agreement that will occur between our two organizations that will bring review locally to this body. In that agreement, SHPO and the Planning and Urban Design Department have reached an agreement that we will be able to review all permits on historic properties in Wyandotte County and Kansas City, Kansas, as soon as we can finish the documentation and get the paperwork signed. This is a big step that's going to save months of time from applicants waiting to hear back. I will also be retroactively going back to permits that SHPO is currently holding on to and reviewing those myself to try to get them done and over with.
Mr. Greaves, Commissioner Schrader has a question.
I just have one question. Is there anything that you need help from Landmarks Commission members for finalizing the paperwork?
This is Randy Greaves. No, sir, there is not. We have sent our first draft to Ms. Ringler today, and we hope to hear back from her very shortly.
And then second question, certain things you will still share with the SHPO, is that correct?
Yes, the order and content of these meetings will change somewhat. So our monthly reporting of what we do is sent to SHPO in the form of these meeting minutes. So starting next month, I will be adding to my reports the number of administrative items I review each month, as well as the major projects. This is going to change how things work a little bit. For major cases, there will be 2 votes. There will be 1 vote for the normal C of A process that you are familiar with, and there will be a second vote for the state law review. The state law review asks 1 question: will the proposed work damage or destroy historically significant architectural features? If no, it is good to proceed. If yes, then changes should be taken to avoid that. And that's where it gets to the nitty-gritty. But this will be a learning process for all of us. We are also in the process of acquiring training for this commission to ensure that they are as prepared as possible for these state law reviews.
One follow-up to that, if I may. In addition to training for us as Landmarks Commission members, as you prepare these revised procedures and everything, I think it behooves all of us to make sure that, you know, I'm sure they will be, but that they're written down and, you know, available on the websites, can be distributed to everybody, because I know probably for as long as I've been associated with this commission, there's always some question that comes up about, well, what's the procedure on this? And sometimes I can help answer that question and sometimes I can't. So as much as we can, and I think particularly as you know, help us all understand what kind of things can be administrative. In other words, don't have to come before this commission, and what kinds of things definitely do need to come before this commission, because that just makes everything efficient. You know, we don't need to be here for hours on end dealing with everything, but at the same time, we want to be able to be, you know, helpful to you and staff so that you're getting the support from us that you need. And, you know, if you and Janet and everybody else are starting to get even more overwhelmed, we want to know so that we can figure out who to talk to. We were each appointed by one of the UG commission members, and we can at least talk to them. So
this is Randy Grease, Short Preservationist. We are already working on that list. That is part of the list we have to send to SHPO with this agreement, is what kind of permits are administrative, which ones require the state law review. Currently, what it looks like is that minor permits that have minimal changes, so like changing a water heater, will be an administrative review. Environs will remain administrative reviews. Work on local properties will not require state law reviews. Locally designated properties, that is. Properties that are pulling major permits, like roofing or siding, window work, that are listed on the state or national registers of historic places. All projects undertaken by the unified government or projects undertaken using funds from the unified government will have to have a state law review. So we will be seeing a different kind of project come into this chamber as well.
One more clarification then. As an example, the C of A that we heard tonight from Parkwood, Parkwood is only locally designated. Am I correct?
That is correct.
So theoretically, a lot of things that would come in Parkwood could be done administratively. Now, as an example, I don't know whether tonight's would have been something that could have been administrative. It probably was too serious, but I don't know. What do you think?
So our normal procedures still apply as they have been. The only addition is for buildings on the state or national register of historic places. So tonight's case would have just been a certificate of appropriateness review, as we did.
Okay. It just would not have gone to Topeka first.
It did not go to Topeka at all.
Oh, because it wasn't
Okay.
state. Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Continuing with the planning and urban design reports, this is Randy Reese, our preservationist. We had our first outreach meeting for the citywide historic preservation plan and comprehensive plan this Saturday. We had about 41 attendees where we discussed what resiliency was and what a thriving community looked like. Tomorrow is our next pizza and planning event where we have pizza and we plan, and it's open to everybody to comment on and view. I believe that information is on the planning webpage. We have begun working with the Lakota group. They will be here for the Vision Summit. And we are very excited to start working with them on the preservation plan process. I am continuing to work on the downtown historic commercial district, the multiple property listing, which brings up another issue. Today, I received an email from the State Historic Preservation Office of Kansas in regards to Antioch Baptist Church at 1335 Quindaro. SHPO has received a nomination for the state and federal registers of historic places. However, this nomination was insufficient and requires a great deal more work before it will be enough to make it to the register according to SHPO. Either the nomination needs to be redone or the multiple property listing needs to be finished by June for there to be any real chance of the building being listed by August so that they can find the funds to repair their roof. SHPO has asked if I knew anybody locally who would be able to help Antioch Baptist Church with their nomination. Unfortunately, staff does not have the bandwidth to handle this at this moment and the time frame that it needs to be done in. Staff has offered to review their nomination and give edits, and will be more than willing to help anybody who does help them with their nomination, but I cannot do it myself. So if you guys know anybody that has free time and would like to help out with the National Register nomination, please have them reach out to me.
We need to think about this and let's see what kind of resource we can come up to assist you. I'm sure there's been some that has gone through this that we might be able to pull from.
Mr. Chairman, I was naive enough to think in the past that, you know, it's not that difficult to put together a national nomination. I was mistaken. It's weeks of work to do it properly, to meet all the standards of the National Park Service and all of these things. It's not something that lay people can do easily. It's also something that's extremely challenging to do for the first time if you've never done it before. I know this came up at our meeting last time. You know, is there a way? The folks at Antioch Baptist Church had reached out to Commissioner Bynum, and it brought up this fact. You know, we need some help on this, and the challenge is, to do this, it's going to take funding and, you know, and hire a professional to do it. There's really not really any other guarantee of making that happen. I wish it were different, but it's just not. And so it's almost like we're not really looking for somebody to do it. We're looking for funding to pay for somebody to do it. And I even told Commissioner Bynum, who had shared an email with me, that, you know, if there's any way they can reach out to, to private funders, for either to just repair the roof, which it's probably cheaper to hire somebody to get the nomination, but it's frustrating because it would be great for us to be able to help, but it's not really in Mr. Greaves' position to do that. It's not our position to do that. The multiple listing for the downtown churches, which this could qualify for, hasn't gone very quickly, and it even in and of itself doesn't do everything necessary for them to actually, it's sort of a listing light. It gets you part of the way there, but it doesn't get you all the way there to get tax credits. So, and then the other challenge is tax credits don't happen immediately. So, if they have a timeline of August, I'm just afraid that our only advice, and I told this to Commissioner Bynum, they're just going to have to find money somewhere else. I wish the case were different, but I just personally don't think it is.
Thank you for your input, Commissioner Schrader. Continue, Mr. Greaves.
This is Randy Greaves, Historic Preservationist. That concludes my section of reports.
Thank you, sir. We do appreciate the efforts and the time that you and your fellow staff members put in. Moving on, old business, Sour Castle update. Mr. Greaves, what could you fill us in quickly about that?
This is Randy Greaves, Historic Preservationist. We have a certificate of appropriateness application for work to Sour Castle. It is an application for an initial phase to stabilize the structure. That work has been sent to SHPO. It might come back and only be handled by us, depending on how long it takes to get the programmatic agreement done with our CLG status, to do our own reviews. Simultaneously, I will be reviewing that, and I hope to bring it before this chamber next month.
Thank you, sir. Do appreciate that. Joy to the world. The next item is, and I don't believe there's any steps being made forward on that, was the National Register nomination for the Church of Christ scientist.
This is Randy Greaves, Historic Preservationist. I do still intend to have a draft submitted by the next commission meeting.
Thank you, sir. All right. Now I'm going to drop back to Commissioner Schrader here, our chairman for our outreach subcommittee, which has been diligently at work after being waylaid by the pandemic. I see some light at the end of the tunnel, sir.
Well, I wouldn't go too far, though. Commissioner Eastwood and Commissioner Welcome Hill and I did have a good meeting here a week or so ago, and due to just a mix up and some misunderstanding, Secretary Parker and I didn't get this, get the meeting minutes out until Randy sent them out this afternoon, but please take a look at those. A couple of things I would like to bring up, and in a roundabout way, it relates to the comment that I made to Mr. Murray when we were talking about the first certificate of occupancy tonight. I think that one of the things that we talked about, the three of us on the committee, subcommittee meeting, was, we need to be, part of our outreach is to really figure out how best to deal with things like the challenges we're having with the building department. I won't go into more into that. Also, as we move forward with the historic preservation plan, there are several things that we're really wanting to engage the consultant with. One of the challenges that we want to avoid is, being the redheaded stepchild, to put an old phrase to it. If at all possible, we would very much like to have a report every month, could be written, but an update every month from the consultant, prepared by the consultant about what's going on. You know, the consultant should be giving those kind of things to staff, I would think. You know, we want to make sure that we're understanding, you know, that they're maintaining budgetary and timeline things. We've had too many instances that I've personally been involved with UG consultants who get done with their work, but nothing can be done with it because it's really not complete. The Downtown Commercial Historic District's one of those. But the whole effort that we had before the pandemic for a new zoning code, totally, I think Commissioner Chamberlain was involved with that as well. The number of hours that just went down the drain and the dollars that went down the drain for not being able to pass a new zoning ordinance, which is desperately needed, is, I don't want that happening with Historic Preservation Plan consultant. So please take a look, Randy, at those suggestions that we're making about how to deal with the Historic Preservation consultant. I'm not trying to cast aspersions on you or the preservation consultant, but we need to keep them on task, or make sure they're being kept on task is a better way to do it. I mean, we probably don't have any authority to do that, but we want to help make that happen. So, you know, and there are a few key things that we would very much like to see in the final plan. Things like, how do we educate the real estate industry? How do we educate folks who are selling owner to owner that, you know, these are historic districts? And how do we educate the building permit department to go follow the regulations? So all of those things. Yeah, so, and yeah, even people who live in historic districts, you know, what are their rules? So anyway, I'm done for that.
Yeah, Mr. Greaves.
If I may, this kind of relates to something I was wanting to talk about anyway. First of all, May is National Historic Preservation Month. So to that, I would like to thank this commission for all of its work, hard work that it has done for historic preservation. Your efforts are appreciated. And for the month of May, I have engaged in a massive outreach campaign with Strategic Communications. I am currently writing a blog post. I am doing video interviews at several locations throughout the city in front of historic sites, including our historic downtown district that we are working on. And I will even be doing a podcast with another member of the planning department, all in an effort to try to reach as many people as possible and talk to them about preservation and alert them to what they need to know to be successful owning a historic home. We are also in the process of updating our webpage to try to make it easier to navigate and the information more clear and concise so that mistakes do not happen. Sometimes the issues are unavoidable. Today's applicants, for example, did not pull permits. There was nobody to tell them that they had a historic home. And we only found out because I happened to be touring Parkwood for the first time shortly after starting here. We watched them do work on the exterior of that building.
Without a permit.
Without a permit. Some things like today's case are unavoidable, sure, so long as people are doing work without pulling the proper permits. BI has been doing a wonderful job lately of communicating with my office when it comes to possibly historic homes. So much so that if it even has a chance of needing historic review, they email or call me to be completely and utterly sure.
Good to know.
Thank you, Mr. Greaves. We appreciate your efforts there. Commissioner Schrader, I see you.
One more little thing, Randy. Thank you for all of the stuff that you're talking about doing for Preservation Month. If you or Ms. Parker could just send us periodic emails saying, check this out, so that we don't find out 2 months later that, oh, great, look at these wonderful things that, you know, that happening with the historic preservation in the UG, you know, share with that. Don't be afraid to send us I'd rather have my email inbox filled with that kind of stuff than a lot of the stuff that I get. So let us know so that we can be part of your support group.
I will be sure to start including you in those emails. This year's theme is people saving places. So it's a shout out to all the people who have spent their time, people like you, spending your free time on a Monday night caring about these historic buildings. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner Schrader, for your job and your subcommittee. I would mention if any of my fellow commissioners have any questions or any input or anything they would like to pass on to this subcommittee, send it to myself or Commissioner Schrader, because that is not a private club that they are operating. But because of the sunshine rules, we can only have so many landmarks commissioners on this committee before it becomes another committee, landmarks commission meeting. So if there's any questions that you have, pass it along. I'll get it to the subcommittee. Keep up your wonderful work on it. And yeah, Commissioner Schrader.
This is Commissioner Schrader. Janet, I saw your picture and I was remembering, is there any update on filling some vacancies for Landmarks Commission?
Yes, and before I do that, Mrs. Easterwood had her hand up.
Hello.
Commissioner Easterwood, your hand was up.
Yes, I was just going to ask Randy if he had thought about possibly going on one of the local TV shows to talk about that. One of the local news programs like they have in the mornings.
This is Randy Greaves, historic preservationist. There is a chance that the interviews and recordings I am doing will be shown on the UG's TV channel. We have to go through a long series of approvals before we can be interviewed directly by news media.
Okay.
The Strategic Communications Department has just added 2 new members, and we saw this as a great opportunity to start working between other departments and seeing what kind of stuff we can create with outreach. We are very excited for what we're producing.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
yes.
I am working with the Commissioner's office on getting these vacancies filled. I sent someone a volunteer form and they sent it back to me and I forwarded it to the commission office for whoever would like to appoint this person to the Landmarks Commission. It is someone that's been on here before, so they know the drill, so that will be helpful. And Mickey has her hand up now.
Commissioner Hill.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Janet. This is Commissioner Welcome Hill. I've also been in contact with 2 folks, and I have a potential banking person to fill our banking slot. So don't hold your breath, but cross your fingers for me. I'm working on it.
Good work. All right. This has been a long meeting tonight. I think a productive meeting. And I look forward to having more productive meetings. Thank you, one and all, my fellow commissioners, for your attendance tonight. I do appreciate it because a quorum is necessary for us to move on to the future. At this point, I call this meeting adjourned.
Good night, all.
Good night, everybody.
Thanks again, Jen.